Okay, here's the online seminar session for KEN2002 Shakespeare. And what I'll do is I'll just divide it up into three sections. First, just wrapping up Shakespeare, and I'll speak only for 5 or 6 minutes about that. The second one I will look at is the way in which your essay will be graded. That will hopefully give you some idea as to how you should prepare your essay and where you can pick up marks and so on. And then the third part I will look at will be preparing for the class test. So the wrapping up Shakespeare, I just want to remind you of a few things. First, what's so good about Shakespeare? Having an idea in your own head as to why we should bother studying this stuff is going to be very useful for you, and it's something you should think about before you go into schools or before you teach it, because you know that teenagers are going to say, what's the point? What's the point in studying Shakespeare? And really we've got to be able to make some sort of argument as to why he is good. What is good about him? Obvious things are that the stories are very interesting, but we must acknowledge that for the most part Shakespeare didn't actually write the stories or create the stories. Indeed, he tended to lift them from here, there and everywhere. What's good about him generally is the characters and the characterization. He has created characters that appear to resonate across time. In other words, that no matter what the time, whether it is in the time of Samuel Taylor Coleridge or later on into people like T.S. Eliot or Sigmund Freud, or all the way through to today, we seem to see something in Shakespeare's characters that still tells us or informs us something about human personalities, human motivations, things like love and jealousy and greed and so on. So in a way, what Shakespeare provides us with in his plays are insightful meditations on what it is like to be human. And we must remember that Shakespeare comes from, or his intellectual background is in, sort of humanist philosophy. And humanism is this idea that understanding comes from within the human, that we don't abdicate our responsibility for ourselves to something like a god or a religion or something like that. Rather that the analysis of the human mind and the human soul and the power of the human individual is at the center of this sort of understanding of the world, that the human is all, if you like. And we get a lot of that in Shakespeare's work, a discussion of what it is to be human in various scenarios. Coupled to that great characterization, we also have his expertise in utilizing the dramatic genre. We have three types of plays: the histories, the tragedies and the comedies. Remember, the history plays are about generally what it would be to be a king, because they mostly deal with kings and queens and princes and dukes and whatnot. And the tragedies look at human frailties, things like jealousy, things like ambition, things like revenge, and so on. And the comedies frequently look at things like love, contentment, marriage, and so on. And I guess you could say that's a full cross spectrum of human experience, but his handling of the dramatic genre, because it's actually quite difficult to make a play. If you ever sat down to try and write one, it's very difficult to decide what goes on stage, because a dramatist has only 2.5–3 hours in which to tell their tale. And remember, they cannot use diegesis. They cannot tell us, oh, this is what happened, this is what's going to happen, this is what this person looks like, this is what this person's thinking. They have to show us it. Drama is predominantly mimetic. We see the action unfold before us, and that limits authors down a great deal, because whereas a novelist could say 20 years passed, or could give us 5-page analysis of a character's thoughts, a dramatist can't. he has to show us. It has to be done through action. And if he needs to give us any information, it has to be incorporated smoothly into a character's dialogue. So it's very difficult to decide what should be put on stage, what would best summarize the story, or what would best represent the themes, or whatever. And what we see with Shakespeare is an expert handling of stripping a story down to its bare bones and giving us the crucial actions and acts and scenes and so on that go towards creating a very complex, multi-layered story. And that's done again through characterization, but also through dividing a story up into scenes and acts, allowing the action to rise in intensity and then to set it back down again, and to maintain that over 2-3 hours, to keep the audience with you, is a very difficult thing to do. So what do we look for when we're analysing a play? Well, we look for the way in which characters are developed. And I talked about the idea of two-dimensional characters, i.e. characters who we don't learn a lot about, but they help to move the story on. And we have the three-dimensional characters, those characters that we really get inside their head, we feel we know them. And we look at which characters have been fully developed and which haven't, and we hypothesize then, we come up with an argument as to why that may have been, linking it perhaps to the themes. And we look at the way in which the play is structured. What do we get told? How do we get told it? And in what order are things revealed to us? So Act 1 and Act 2, what's contained within those acts, or Act 1, Scene 1, Act 1, Scene 2. Why does he move us from Scene 1 to Scene 2? What are the transitions that are happening here? So we look at the characters who people the fictional world that Shakespeare has created, or the dramatist, and we look at the structure of the play, how it has all been put together, and then we analyse, or we discuss how the author has done that, and then we hypothesize why, and then we reflect. Has it been done well? Has it something been particularly smoothly done, or particularly powerfully done, and how was that power created? So really, remember I gave you those 4 headings: observe, analyze, reflect, critique. You observe something, you analyze the way in which it's done, you reflect upon why it may have been done in that way, and then you critique how successfully you think it has been done. So observe, analyze, reflect, critique. Ultimately, remember that there are no sacred cows in analysing literature. Shakespeare has this massive persona. Everybody has heard of Shakespeare. Everybody in the world, it seems, has heard of Shakespeare. And we feel that we must be bowled over by him all the time. And sometimes I guess we're a little bit underwhelmed because we had such great expectations. I would say that that's perhaps because we don't know how to appreciate the work he's done. But the point I'm trying to make is, don't be afraid of saying sometimes that maybe something wasn't done very well. So long as you can make a rational, justified argument as to why you believe that to be so, that something wasn't done very well, that a character wasn't developed, that a storyline wasn't fully expanded, or whatever, always support your argument. That's all I ask for. I'm not asking you for to love Shakespeare wholeheartedly for the rest of your life. You can critique him, but critique him rationally. So that's the first part. What's so good about Shakespeare? What's special about the dramatic genre? I said we see everything happening in front of us, unlike with novels. What do we look for when analysing a play? The characters, the structure of the play, and linking that to the themes. And then I'm saying we can critique, we can criticise, but we must do it through rational argumentation with evidence, research, convincing debate.